Simcha, celebration, Simcha, Simcha, celebration of life.
Hi from me, Jared Epstein, and welcome to another episode of Simcha, a celebration of life. COVID-19 has taken the world by storm, but how do we move forward with life post-corona? Rabbi Ari Shishler from the Jewish Life Center joins us for the first of three important discussions on the topic. This week, he discusses what the lessons we've learned are and if there have been any silver linings in this chaotic climate.
I think we'll all agree that the last few months have been incredibly unusual. This coronavirus caught us completely by surprise, and it's triggered a whole lot of concern, insecurity, fear about the future, and of course, this unusual way of living, locked down, whether we are still officially locked down or just being advised to lock down. Now, as Jews, we've been trained that whenever something happens in life, you should always look for and try to find a positive take-home lesson. So if something's happening in your life right now, that means that it's got something of value you could extract and use in life going forward. So what possibly could we take positively out of this experience? I mean, people are ill and we wish them well and we hope that they'll recover quickly. People are struggling financially and we pray that they should quickly resume their jobs, their income, and be not only stable financially, but better than they were before. So where's the good in all of this? I suppose you choose in life how to look at things. There's an ancient Jewish teaching that says you have two eyes. The left eye is to look at yourself and be introspective. The right eye, which is supposed to be the kind eye, is to look at others and to try and help them. And an expansion of that principle is to learn how to be satisfied with what we have, to rejoice in what we have on the one hand, and then to try and help others who have less to get through their difficult circumstances. And I think that's lesson one. We live in a consumer-driven society. Everybody wants what somebody else has, and we want more and more of it. This experience and this lockdown has taught us two important things. Firstly, what's really important in life, our families, our health, our faith, and that we don't necessarily need to have all of those things in order to be happy. When you're stuck at home and you recognize wonderful things like the beautiful blue African sky that we all have regardless of what we can and can't afford. When you appreciate the fact that we're going into winter, but it's relatively mild compared to other places in the world. When you appreciate the wonderful people that we have in this country and the way that we interact with each other, especially in times of crisis, you come to appreciate you don't need to have that next brand label item or the newest gadget in order to be happy. Happiness comes from within ourselves. And to me, the overarching lesson of this experience is that life often has conflict between friends, conflict within families, conflict between different cultural groups, conflict between countries. And what the coronavirus has done for us is reminded us that ultimately there's one thing we all care about equally. And if it's threatened, we all feel threatened equally, and that is life itself. So when right across the whole world, everybody is worried about life and about health, we all band together, we work together, we collaborate, we put aside differences. You look in this country, it doesn't matter who you are or how wealthy, successful, or famous you are, we pull together. We practice social distance. We put on our masks because we recognize your life is just as valuable as mine, and your life is as much my responsibility as my life is. That incredible sense of unity is something beautiful, magical, miraculous. It's something this country has always been good at. At times of crisis, we pull together. This is a time of crisis that, please God, will pull us together and will come out on the other side a more united, more caring community, country, nation, with a better sense of what's really important in life.
Ninth Street is a group of multidisciplinary Jewish artists based in Joburg. We chat to founder Lee Noodleman Sussman to find out what they're all about and how they're contributing to sustaining the Jewish community through art.
Ninth Street is a community of Jewish Joburgers who are either practicing artists or people who are seeking to live more creatively in the city as Jews. Jewish educators, academics, arts practitioners, and multidisciplinary artists in all the art spheres. And it's not just us, but the whole family becomes involved in our community. My role is really as a leader, but I have two other people who work very closely with me. The one is a singer and a musician, Farrell Roth, and Karen Katz, who studied theatre and performance at Wits with me, but she's now moved into teaching and facilitating and training. What's interesting about Ninth Street is that it's not just the leaders who are making decisions, because we really want every single member in our community to have a voice and to help us focus on the journey that we take together as a community. Everybody has a role to play, and in that way, people start to take ownership of Ninth Street and start to get more involved in the organization of events and everything we do. We rely on our community members to participate. Jewish identity has always been part of my life, although not from a religious point of view, from a cultural point of view. I've always found that I'm proud of my Jewish identity. And I started exploring what this would mean as a professional artist. I started looking at Jewish narratives in my professional work as a performer. And I had this feeling in the back of my mind from previous work that I've done that arts and culture could help the Jewish community in some way to deal with these problems. And these problems were, disengaged youth who weren't interested in their Jewish identity. And also that the Jewish community had isolated itself from the wider South African society. And the third and last one was this complex identity that we have as white South African Jews. How do we navigate that identity? It's very problematic and difficult. So we started with just in-house meetings, even though it was our goal to start, putting our stuff out there to the public. We started by just nurturing ourselves and by having meetings at each other's homes and by sharing our work with each other. And we often related those meetings to the Jewish calendar. So if there was a festival on the Jewish calendar, we'd often connect to that and kind of use the traditions and turn them on their head and reflect it back to us as creatives and what it meant for us as creatives. Our very first public appearance was at something called Limud, which is a conference of Jewish learning that happens in 3 cities in South Africa, and we presented at the one in Johannesburg. And it was a lot of fun. We created a game of cards where we put words on the cards and people would choose a card and would look at that word that was very specific to Jewish experience in Johannesburg. So, for example, if the word was the Hillbrow Tower, you'd have to either tell a personal story or you could make up a story or drink. It was for adults only. On a Saturday night, we played this game. And it was fascinating to see how most people told a personal story. And I think that just showed how Ninth Street is a place where we can connect, and we can connect connect with each other, where we can be more vulnerable and we can show our true selves. And in October last year, we collaborated with another community called Creative Gatherings, and we put together a performance during the Jewish holiday Sukkot, where we had Jews and non-Jews event on a pool deck of the Genesis Hotel. And then this year we've had one public event also on another festival where we got into an Orthodox shul to do what is called a Purim spiel, a play about the Purim story. And within Jewish law, where a woman's not allowed to sing in a very religious Jewish setting, we managed to get around it and to make a Jewish rap about the story of Purim. We spoke about Queen Vashti, who in the story has no voice, and in our rap, we gave the Queen a voice.
You see, many times I sat back and contemplate. I was left off the page, but now I'm telling my story.
My favorite moment so far for 9th Street was in February this year, when we had an artist presentation at our namesake, which is a synagogue down the road from where I live, which is nicknamed 9th Street Shul. Its real name is the Orange Grove Hebrew Congregation. And it was the New Year of the Trees on the Jewish calendar, called Tu B'Shvat. The thing about 9th Street Shul you have to know is that it's on Louis Botha Avenue in Johannesburg, the spine of Johannesburg connecting the inner city to Alexandra Township. And it's not a place that Jews frequent, and neither are public parks. These are spaces, particularly at night, where white Jews don't feel safe. And we wanted to test those boundaries. And when we first approached them to access their main gate, to enter Patterson Park, the answer was absolutely not. This gate's been closed for decades for security reasons. And on the night when we got there, the rabbi of the synagogue was there, and he was very interested in what we were doing. And he told the caretaker to open the gate for us. And it was this really symbolic and momentous occasion. It brings tears to my eyes to think about it, that this gate that had been closed for decades for security reasons to keep Jews safe was now open. And we had the most meaningful celebration of this festival, drinking wine and eating fruit and nuts, connecting to the trees that we were celebrating, and talking about ourselves as creatives and what it means to have a winter, to have a fallow moment in our creative process, and what it means to have a spring where we're blossoming and flowering. So it was extremely meaningful and definitely my favorite event so far.
And here, away from everyone, she cried. Her tears were so full of feeling, so thick and full, and they didn't disappear into the ground. The first time, she didn't notice that. Her thick, heavy tears stayed where they were, on the sand, in the small dome.
I remember right at the beginning of 9th Street, one of the challenges that were thrown at me was, are you trying to do too much? Is this thing going to become, very fragmented? Maybe we should just focus on the Jewish aspect of this thing and working on, breaking silos within the Jewish community. Or we should focus on reaching out and expanding outwards and finding this link between the Jewish community and wider South African society. And I think at that point I said, there's no way that we can have these two things they coexist together, they exist together. And as Jews in South Africa, we have to look at our South African identity as well. We can't ignore it. So I think one of the things that we're really working on, and our vision, is to really find our place here as predominantly whites and as Jews, and to look at our history and how our history really informs how we are at the moment, and the real difficulty of being a Jewish South African. It is so complex. We're really trying to help the community figure this out. We've got this weird dichotomy of we were whites during apartheid, and we're still benefiting as whites from the ills of apartheid, even though for many of us in 9th Street we were born just as we were children during apartheid or born just after the new dispensation and had nothing to do with apartheid, we're still benefiting. And we need to negotiate that part of our identity mixed in together with this hugely complex history of always being the victim, of being perpetrated against. So it's this really difficult tightrope that we're having to walk as South African Jews. And I don't think many people have thought about it or considered it, how difficult this is. So I think one of the things that 9th Street can really do is to help the Jewish community navigate through this.
Ask the Elders is a brand new feature on Simcha. We go around to the youngest members of our community to ask some important questions. Each week, we'll pose a different question to them, then speak to a different elder in the community to elaborate on these answers. This week we ask, why Jews don't eat cheeseburgers? We get some wonderful, funny, and truthful answers, and then Tova Goldstein explains.
It's not kosher because they're gross. I don't know. Because it's not healthy. Because they're vegans. Because then they mix milk and meat, and then that's the rule for Hashem. If they're kosher, but if they're not kosher, then you can mix milk or meat.
The biblical term tells us that we can't cook a kid in its mother's milk. And the reason why it is so specific is because milk represents life. That is something that we feed our children with to keep them alive when they are first born. That is what humans do. A cow feeds her calf with milk. So milk literally represents life. It is a life-giving substance. As opposed to meat, an animal that we eat, represents death. And we believe that in order for us to be sensitive to what we are doing and what we are eating, and more importantly, what we are putting into our bodies, because we do believe that we are what we eat, we cannot put the two together because it is showing something that perhaps might be a little bit unkind towards the animal. Beautiful short story. Back in the old days, there was a small town that was receiving its new slaughterer, and the rabbi went to welcome the shochet, the slaughterer. And the rabbi saw that the slaughterer was wetting his knife on a wet sponge, because one of the laws is that the knife has to be wet. And the rabbi said to him, "Why are you wetting the knife on a sponge?" And the slaughterer said, "Well, that's how we do it. It has to be wet." And the rabbi said, "That's interesting, because our previous slaughterer wet the knife with his tears." And it's really just to remind us that we need to be sensitive to what we are eating, sensitive to the animals. We need to be kind and thankful and grateful to the animal for giving us the food that we eat and that we put in our bodies. And all of this makes us into kinder, better people.
That brings us to the end of this week's episode of Simcha, a celebration of life. As always, we'd love to hear from you, so please send us a Facebook message at Spirit Sister Productions. From me, Jared Epstein, and the Simcha team, remember, the innocence of children is what makes them stand out as a shining example to the rest of mankind.